Blessings. Blessings and welcome, everyone. Checking all of the connections here. Oh, it is such a gift, as always, to be with you. Blessed, blessed community. And the Swami is here. And he's not moving. See him? There he is, right there. If you're on Instagram Live, you can see him snuggled up here, the little Swami. YouTube, the shot is a little bit different. So anyway, blessings and welcome, dear communities, YouTube and Instagram Live. It is such a gift and such a blessing to be with you here today and always. And thank you. People are already joining on Instagram. I'm so grateful. If you are jumping on YouTube, leave me a little comment. I'm so very grateful. I am Tuesday May Thomas, and this is my weekly live stream 4D Trinity, where we bridge fourth dimensional consciousness through the unity of mind, body, and emotions. And what does that even mean? That means that there is a spiritual component to us. And by aligning the mind, the body, and emotions in balance, in harmonic convergence with one another, we are put in tune with the divine spirit that is us, that is within us here, now, and evermore. And as we are put in tune with that divine spirit, blessings everyone on Instagram joining in. Thank you so much. Blessings and welcome. As we attune with that divine spirit, oh, there goes the Swami. There he goes. All right. As we attune with that divine spirit, that spirit is love. And we call it God sometimes here, or probably all the time. But let us remember and let us maybe redefine this notion of God, and that God really is that frequency, that vibration of love without an opposite. God is love, and love is your fundamental beingness, your fundamental beingness. That is your divine birthright. Blessings, blessings. Thank you, everyone on Instagram, for sending so much love and so much light. I'm so very grateful. It is new for me. This is the second week that I'm broadcasting on YouTube and on Instagram Live. And so I really appreciate all of your support. Thank you so very much. So yes, here we bridge the mind, the body, the emotions with spirit. And as we anchor these aspects of self, of our multidimensionality with spirit, with God, with love, we are put in tune with love. We are anchored in love. And through the bridgeway of us, through the crystalline tube that houses the spine and the chakra system, we are plugged in above and below to that divine frequency of love, to the truth of love and light that resides within us and all around us. And so through this bridging, through this aligning, we are divinely creating the correct conditions to become a channel and a conduit for heaven on earth realization, to happen through us and to us and for us. And that spills out through all of creation. And we get to share this divine union, this divine practice of being in the world and not being of it. And this is such a very exciting place to exist, because it is not the world as we've known it. It is not this 3D binary system of choices between love and fear. No, what we do here when we bridge fourth dimensional consciousness, when we bridge that heaven on earth realization, and we begin to bring it down through us, through our conscious words, actions, and deeds, what happens is we hit into and we bridge 4D. And 4D is the place of the heart. This is where spirit dwells. This is where God dwells, in our hearts, in the truth of our hearts. All blessings. Thank you, everyone on Instagram. I'm so very grateful that you have hopped on and stopped by. Thank you for your support. I'm so very grateful. I really, really am. So yes, as we access that multidimensionality of self, we are put in tune with the voice of God. We are put in tune with all of those qualities that we call here in the teachings that I share trinary. And this is different from binary, because in trinary, there is not just this choice between love and fear. There is another option. There is another way. And this other way is love. And it's not just the love that resides as the dual aspect of love and fear. It is the love that has no opposite. And that is what we call God. It is the feeling, realization of oneness that always is, that always, always is. And so blessings and welcome. That is my little spiel about 4D Trinity, this little show. And I thank you again, everyone, for hopping on. So getting into it, I do have to cover a few things. Please, if you are not a subscriber at my website, my links are down below if you're on YouTube. If you're on Insta, it's at my main page, tuesdaymaythomas.com. It is there at my website. From the first page, you can become a subscriber and receive my monthly love letter, where I send out my monthly blog and information on my teachings and my books. So thank you so much, everyone, for supporting and being a part of this divine community. And to begin this week, I wanted to riff a little bit off of the teachings that we were sharing last week regarding, what was our topic last week? It was live like you're going to die. So I had received a phone call from someone very, very dear from me who has been dealing with depression. They're around in their 30s, and they've been dealing with depression for half of their life, since they've become aware, since they were about 14 or 15 years old, and really feeling that suicidal tendency, that tendency that speaks to that they do not, they're done here. And they're done here from a space of grace, not they want to just sort of set the world on fire and leave it all behind. And rather, there is a space of grace where they feel content. They feel that they have done what they've needed to do and they're ready to go. But they have felt such, and these are my own projections about it, but they've felt such shame about suffering with depression, about having that aspect in their life and not being able to share that with their friends, with their family, with their beloveds, that now that they're at this certain part of their life, being in their 30s, they've realized that they don't give a fuck, you know, that they need to share their truth about how they are experiencing life. And so what they went and did is they went and they told all of their nearest and dearest friends and family about their depression. Not necessarily that they're ready to leave this life and split and take off and die, as it were, yet they expressed their depression and that how very deeply shackled they feel by this, just feeling like they're just done. There's no place for them here anymore. No matter how much money, no matter how much romance, no matter how many cars or how much whatever, it doesn't matter. They have reached a different plane of their existence and they are ready to move on. So with this, it is very interesting because as they were expressing this to me, and again, chiming off of last week's 4DT, which if you're on YouTube, I will put a link up top and later. But chiming off of that, it was so interesting to speak with them on the phone, because what they expressed is that through the expression of just cutting it clean and telling it like it is to their dearest and nearest friends and family, and just being really honest about where they are and where they have been in their struggles in this life, they've actually experienced a sense of freedom, a sense where they can actually just take an inhale and an exhale and arrive into the now moment and be true and authentic and integral to themselves. So even though it has to do with depression and leaving and suicide and all of this stuff, there's actually, interestingly enough, this ironic switch now that's happened. Live like you're going to die, where they've realized that through finally being able to just say, I just need to say my truth and tell it like it is, through that divine expression, it's like they've let a load off. And now they're able to breathe in a new way. Now they're able to take life in, as it were, in a new way. Now they are able to relax, right? And that's the basis of the Heaven on Earth teachings that I share, is that in order to really begin to tap that heaven on earth realization in that space, what is required is our willingness to relax. Our willingness to allow peace, space in our minds, in our bodies, in our hearts, in our day-to-day lives. And it's from that divine portal, that divine gateway, that then that grace is received through us. So I thought it was just so interesting the way that they expressed that, and then they were suddenly sovereign. All of a sudden, that needing to leave here, to die, to get away from here, is lightened. There is a levity about them now. There is a levitational quality in the happenstance of their existence in this body on this planet that was not there before. They have allowed and given themselves wings through expressing their truth, albeit one that is rooted in death. But so often it is our willingness, right, to die a certain death, whether it is metaphorical, the spiritual, the cycles of healing, where the old is given to death, the shedding of skins, and so that the new can be reborn through us. This is what's happening for that individual. And I thought it was so interesting. So I just wanted to speak on that a little bit as our segue going into today's topics and theme being levity versus gravity, the metaphysics behind, what keeps us anchored and gravity bound here to the earth, and what actually sets us free and allows us to be in the world and not of it. In the world and not of it. I do have some notes that I'm going to read from. I often like to look words up on the Google or through the Wikipedia and gain an insight and share that insight of what the consensus is of the collective. What is the collective definition or definitions? What are those collective definitions of what we consider specific words to be? And as we know here, and we'll constantly remind ourselves that what we're doing as we calibrate, as we allow and make space for that 4D consciousness to be realized through us, is we are creating a new language of light. We are creating a new language of love and light that we get to speak by in new words and new terms. If we think about it, the world as we know it, the binary system, love versus fear, the duality, the polarity of time and space as we have been brought up to know it. Well, these aspects root us in gravity, root us in the world, and they are all based on stories that we've been told through our lives. So those aspects that keep us anchored and keep us rooted and grounded, that serve us, we keep and we learn and we continue to grow. They give us that wind beneath our wings. Whereas those stories and the conditionings and those layers from the past that no longer serve us, well, we learn as we learn to heal our lives, to meditate, to grow spiritually. We learn how to cut those cords, how to heal, how to forgive, how to bless, how to release those aspects so that we can gain a levitational quality in our existence of being here. And that is sovereignty. That is freedom. That is us living our truth. That is us relinquishing the need to gain validation from people, places, and things outside of ourselves, right? Or outside of love. I mean, really, and ultimately when you surrender to God, to love, to that divine that simply is, you realize you actually don't need validation at all. Because love is the truth. And if you're with me on that, you're with me. And if this is just a little bit of information that perhaps you'll chew on and consider for another time, that's cool too. That's cool too. This is all just the channeling and transmission of 4D consciousness teachings, of heaven on earth teachings. And that's what I'm here to do, right? I am here to be a space holder and a way shower for fourth dimensional consciousness, for heaven on earth, realization, and all the teachings therein. That is what I'm here to do. So thank you again for being here with me and sharing that. So let's come back to this idea. And I love using my art here, actually. So we consider that this is us in our true glory and beauty and just simple beingness. This is you. This is me. This is us. This is we. Love, right? We consider this beautiful, bright, white light, this just simple, almost no thingness, as it were, that this is our truth. Everything else on top of it, all of the stories, all of the layers of conditioning, everything that we've been told about the world, the things that we should fear, how we should think about money, our sex, our bodies, being a man, a woman, just all the stories, our cultures, religions, traditions, etc. This is the stuff of the mind. And I often will pertain and refer to this picture as being a symbol that displays the grid matrix of collective consciousness. The grid matrix of collective consciousness is the network of all of the threads of energy, mind, word, definition, agreement, feelings, and emotions that all beings on this planet have ever felt or expressed through all time and space. And time being Since the beginning of time, whenever we have a collective agreement of whenever that was, whenever that set point of whenever we've decided on time, that from that point on, in all the lifetimes we've ever had, if we believe in reincarnation here on this planet, that there is a storehouse for all of those feelings, those thoughts, those considerations, and all of those individual threads that get kicked off from our individual bodies. If you are here as this stick figure and all of your thoughts and feelings are set off from you, from your mind, from your heart, from your body, from your cells, from every part of your being, they connect you to the grid, this aspect here being the grid, this crisscross patchwork. They connect you to the grid and go out from there, connecting with the collective. So we understand this aspect of what you put out, you receive back an infinite fold or a multiple fold. Well, this speaks to the grid so beautifully, because if I have my individual thought about money, about how it's hard to make money, like attracts like. And what happens is my thought about money, about whatever it is, whether it's a seeming negative or positive thought about it, my thought is going to connect in with all of those like thoughts that have ever been had, all of those like feelings and emotions and definitions and agreements and contracts even that have ever been held and carried through all time and space and dimensions in this universe. And the storehouse for this, all of those definitions, words, agreements, etc., is the grid matrix of collective consciousness. And so when I plug in, when I put out a thought about whatever it is, I'm connecting my little thought with the grand strata of all thoughts through all time and space. And then those thoughts are going to plug back into me and filter and pump into me the agreements therein. And so whatever I decide is, right? We've heard that term, right? Whatever you think is. And it's really as simple as that. And the cool thing is that you can change your mind. You can change your mind about what you think at any given moment, right? So that we can go from that depressed or that feeling of lack consciousness state and shift that. So we can go from feeling gravity bound, because ultimately, let's talk about this for a moment. The grid matrix of collective consciousness is of the 3D. It is of this third dimensional place we call the world. The world. And where are we going? In 4D, we are bridging heaven on earth, which is a very, very different realm of experience. And those of you who live heaven on earth, you know this. You know this to be true for yourself. You know this to be true for yourself. And so in this binary system where we have been trained and taught to think in the realms of love versus fear, and that those are our only options. Well, this is where all of those dualistic polarized thoughts are contained. So with fear and love, let us remember though that love does reside here as a part of the equation. And with that love, we learn to use the language of light through our thoughts, through our words, and through our actions and deeds, that we may move through the labyrinth of this divine matrix. We connect to the divine matrix by really conditioning ourselves, by training our minds, training our words, training our actions and deeds in the way of love, so that we connect with all of those other like energies and frequencies of love and light. And we bridge, we begin to connect, and we move through this 3D and into the 4D, through the 0 point, the portal that is always rooted in the heart. It's always rooted in the heart, the space of spirit, of God, of love. And the way that I teach, it is always rooted in the heart. And it is from this place of connecting with that divine source, with that divine that is always within us, that we are granted levity. So we understand that as we heal our lives, as we forgive, as we forget, and really allow ourselves to come into the experience of the now moment, which is us being sovereign. It is us not living in the past. It is us not bringing the past and projecting it into the future. It is really having no concerns about the future or the past. It is being so free and so healed that you are now in the now. And why are you in the now? Because you know thyself. And even further than that, you know thyself divine. And the word contained in know is now. You are nowing thyself divine. And that's when the metaphysics of all this stuff starts to really shift. And again, part of my work here is to make the invisible visible. We are bridging the gap between all of these spiritual practices that we do and how it works behind the veil, behind the curtain. We're coming to understand that we are directly connected to our divine experience and to all of those experiences that we might consider less than divine. Less than divine. So I have a gathering of friends here, beautiful, beautiful beings and friends on Instagram. Everyone, you know, and we've never really met. We've never met in the 3D, yet there is such a kinship and such a blessing. And I'm going to read into some notes now. And it's so funny because this morning, as I awoke and thinking about today's show, I thought about this gang of friends that we have a little, you know, on Instagram, you can do this little direct messaging thing where you can have chats. And there's, and I pray I'm saying it correctly, but at Bosnacity, Muppet Finder, and Frequency Jam. And I thought about all three of you specifically this morning because these people have an advanced awareness or an advanced vocabulary in the way of science, in the way of magnetism, in the way of frequency, etc., that is beyond mine. The words that I speak and that I share are sheerly intuitive and come from that divine, come from love, come from all the angels and the guides that work with me. Oh, and actually, let's take a moment. I usually really love to do this. I first would like to say, I thought that was you, April. Blessings for hanging out on YouTube. I'm so very, very grateful, sister. So let's just take a moment as we get into the juicy part of this beautiful 4D Trinity offering today. We call in our angels, our guides, all of those divine light beings who love us. We welcome you, our animal spirit totems, ascended masters, all love and light of this universe. May I channel the most high messages that serve one and all. I sign myself into the keynote of everyone guided to join this live stream here now and through all time and space, that all messages I share, whether someone hops on for 5 minutes or stays for the whole show, receives exactly what they need to hear. They get what they have come for, myself included. And so we thank you, our angels and our guides. We thank you. We thank you. And so it is. And so it is. And so it is. Okay, so anyway, so this gang of friends here on Instagram, which I pray you get a chance to join in and to welcome yourself here to watching this live. They might have a lot more to say about this, and I welcome that conversation. So I'm going to read from you some stuff that I got from the Google and the Wikipedia and such. So speaking of levitation, it comes from the Latin word levitas, which means lightness. Now, isn't that so interesting? Because the lightness of being, the lightness that happens when we become unbound by the stories, the conditioning, the pain, the shame, all of the reasons why we should think that fear is real. As we release those aspects of this universe from ourselves, we become lighter. There is space then as we release the tars, from the light body, right? Here's your light body. Here's that traditional chakra system that so many of us learn about. As we do not heal the pains and the traumas and the issues of our past, what happens is we begin to dirty through the crystalline tube and through the nadis, the channels, the meridians that make us up in our energetic schism of being. And eventually all the tubes, the channels, the aura, everything becomes clouded and dark. And so we gather this idea of this tar body. We gather our toxic twin versus the light body. But as we heal, as we choose love, as we forgive, as we allow ourselves to move beyond the pain, what happens is that light body gets calibrated, the chakras light up, and we become illumined. And so that lightness of being takes place, and we can laugh. We just find ourselves laughing. There's space then for love, for God, for light, for source to enter us, for us to be inspired in how we might live and how we might be activated and turned on. We talk about this all the time, being turned on, having libido, having energy, right? Which is really enough of those tars, of those fears, of those pains being cleared out and healed to the point where your kundalini can naturally percolate. And then that's a whole ride in itself, learning to just relax into those percolations and the initiations of that, of self being in that. So let's continue. So levitation is the process by which an object is held aloft without mechanical support in a stable position. So that's what happens to us, is we begin to find and feel this lightness that does not require the support of the stories, that does not require the affirmation even of a story, whether it's good or bad, because we come into a knowing so deeply that our truth is love, that even that starts to disappear. But that's kind of going off in another realm. So let's stay focused. I'm talking to myself. Levitation is accomplished by providing an upward force that counteracts the pull of gravity in relation to gravity on Earth, plus a smaller stabilizing force that pushes the object, being you and I, toward a home position whenever it is a small distance away from that home position. In this sense, I like to think about that home position as being the heart. That this is the home position. And this is what brings us home. And it's interesting because levitation is accomplished by providing an upward force that counteracts the pull of gravity. Well, levity versus gravity. I often will talk about the gravity of the grids. And depending on what grids we're plugged into, depending on what grids, what ideas and beliefs and patterns and addictions and conditioning, the way that we perceive the world, ourselves and otherwise, our bodies, our health, everything, all of those thoughts and beliefs and patterns that we are in, that are rooted in fear through the grid matrix of collective consciousness, well, that is the gravity of the grids. That's when you feel like you can't get a break. That's when you feel the world is against you. That's when you feel hit over and over and over again by those crashing waves of the world, when you feel bound, when you don't feel light and you don't feel free and sovereign, right? That is the gravity of the grids. And so this beautiful upward force, well, what is that? That is what we were just talking about. That's that kundalini. That is that sacred space that is created through the container of self, through the work that you do, through the work that I do. And in this week's tarot, if you watch my tarot on YouTube, or I know I put pieces of my readings up on Instagram, that's what we're talking about is, and now I'm losing my thought, woo, bring it back, is this container. And again, that kundalini, so that as that kundalini is allowed, yes, that's what I'm talking about, that this week, there's this theme of collective kundalini, and that it's not just my bubbles and percolations, but it's your bubbles and percolations, and his and hers and theirs and da, 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 da. And what happens is we begin to create this collective tapestry of light, of love, that we all feel connected to. And you know it. You're at the supermarket, you're at the post office, and you've just, you see someone, you're like, you're in the 4D. Yeah, you're free. I feel you, and you begin to recognize yourself in everyone. And what is really happening is that recognition of the divine, that recognition of God, of love, of light, of source. And those dots of us begin to connect with one another. So that upward force that gives rise to the levitation is that kundalini at first, and is that natural aspect that occurs when we have healed, when we have relinquished, when we have laid the past down. Because gravity is of the past. Gravity is of time. What do we teach here? Time and space. That's how you master your time and space. You master the grids by being a master of your time and space. And I teach here that time is the tip of your tongue. Time is equal to the words that you speak. And space are the thoughts that you hold about the words that you speak. And as we master time and space, and we begin to place love on our tongue and love in our minds and our hearts and our thoughts, continually, on repeat, repetitively, again, we create the correct conditions for that percolation, for that kundalini to bubble up, for the sacred life force that is within you, that contains packets of joy, packets of sheer now moment joy. It's real, my friends. I know you know this because I know you felt it. You wouldn't be here if you have never had a glimmer of that. That's what gives you this propelling of this lightness and this upward levitational force. So let's keep going. Now again, and now this is where, you know, there's these scientific things, and so I want to talk to my gang here on Instagram about this, but so because there's things that I riff off of these definitions, yet there's scientific aspects that I'm not really aware of. And I see Mike has hopped on, Mike Brown on YouTube, and I do want you to know that I did receive your email, and I will be responding very, very soon. Okay, so I'm going to intervene here. Mike here on YouTube says, would it be accurate to say that the divine matrix doesn't exist in an absolute sense, and that one requirement of true healing is to not identify yourself completely with it? Let's talk about this in the sense of, we can put all sorts of labels onto the matrix, right? And this aspect of the divine matrix, if anything, this is what we are learning to tap into as we navigate the learning curve of love versus fear. Mike, we're going to get back to that. That's the God phone, everyone. I'll get back to that, Mike. It's the God phone. Hello. Hey, God. Blessings. God says hi, everyone. Yes. Yes, absolutely. We're doing levity versus gravity. I know. I love it. I love it. Yes. I would love to read from A Course in Miracles regarding this. Yes. Okay. And God, again, just reminds us that God is the feeling realization of oneness. God is love without an opposite. And this is just information. This definition that God is transmitting through this little red God phone is information that we may take to allow us to bridge new aspects of self and new definitions of self in this space and time as we find ourselves. So thank you, dear God. I'm going to read that right now. Right now, right now, right now. I know, because sometimes we leave it till later and then we forget. I'll do it right now. Okay, namaste, God. God says bye. Okay, blessings. And God says there actually really is no such thing as goodbye. So, so A Course in Miracles, as many of you know, I've been a student. I'm on my 4th year of studying this little book, and it has just been such a powerful passage and a healing tool that has helped to train the mind, right? It's a mind training for the most part. And as I shared last week, and as some of you already know from my book, How to Manifest with the Law of Vibration, there's a final chapter in there where I tell you why and how I was inspired to write that book. And it has to do with my ex who attempted suicide in 2015. And it was the most devastating life crisis event in my whole experience of life to this point. And but it was with that partner that I began the studies, that he actually introduced me to A Course in Miracles, and I'm ever so grateful. And he is healing, and we are friends now, and I send you so much love and gratitude, dear friend, dear friend. So God today wants us to speak on lesson number 7. So if you're a Course in Miracles student and you have your book close by, go ahead and grab it and go to lesson 7. So this is interesting that God is love, is inviting us to consider this lesson. There are 365 lessons in A Course in Miracles, and every day of the year, you can read a lesson and allow the guidance of the meditations, of the information to help train your mind in the way of love. The lesson title is I See Only the Past. This idea is particularly difficult to believe at first, yet it is the rationale for all of the preceding ones. Now we're going to break this down a little bit. It is the reason why nothing that you see means anything. And I know if this is new to you, this whole Course in Miracles, it might just seem like, what are we even talking about? I see only the past. It is the reason why nothing that you see means anything, speaks to what you perceive now, if you are bringing the past into your present and into the future, what you are seeing in the now, which is really this, and we'll get back to you, Mike, but what is really this is clouded by the past. And so nothing I see means anything, really and truly, because if what I'm seeing is only an impression of what I have decided is my truth from the past, then I am not seeing correctly. Next one, it is the reason why you have given everything you see all the meaning it has for you. I see only the past. Everything in the past that has happened to us, marks the timeline of our existence here. And so it is the reason why you have given everything you see all the meaning it has for you. Everything that I experience now, we have just been trained. This is the way we are naturally trained, that we subconsciously, unconsciously, or even consciously imprint everything that has happened in the past into what's happening right now in our lives. And so often, especially if that's pain, if that's trauma, if that's fear-based, if that's, you know, based in violence, and bless us all, you know, these 3D real seeming experiences, we tend to give the meaning of what is here now what was then, whether it's a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a relationship, a job. Well, it didn't work out then, so then it's not going to work out now. Or those kind of people always do this. We're constantly bringing, that's just how we do it. We bring the past into the now. But the name of this lesson again is I see only the past. I see only the past. It is the reason why you do not understand anything you see, because if you're only seeing from the past, how can you see with true vision in the now moment? It is the reason why your thoughts do not mean anything, and why they are like the things you see. Your thoughts do not mean anything because the past does not really exist, you see. In this realm of metaphysics, in this realm of heaven on earth, there is only the now moment. And I have this funny little story to tell you. So a very dear relation was visiting over the holidays, and myself and the BFF, Will, as many of you know him, he's my divine counterpart in many ways. Started off as my apprentice, is now a master in his own right, that being with Reiki specifically, and the metaphysical teachings that I share. And now just a part of every day of my life, really, and helping to hold space for these teachings. So anyway, he was here over the holidays, divine relation was over, and this divine relation became quite perturbed and agitated at the two of us because, well, in her words, she said, you guys just so frustrate me because you're not in the past, you're not in the future, you're just like in the now. And I kind of deep inside, I kind of said, oh, that's so cool. I said, thank you, you know, and I couldn't wait to tell him about it. I was like, oh my God, this is so funny, you know, but so it's this interesting thing where we get stuck. We hold on to the past. We hold on to who we were. We hold on to everything from the past, but that real true sovereignty is realizing that even yesterday, even this morning, it only exists to the degree that you say yes to it. It only exists to the degree that you allow it to. And where it aligns with those aspects that are, again, rooted in pain and fear and all of that dual aspect stuff that keeps us gravity bound to rerunning those patterns, to reliving those cycles, right? That is not allowing us to be in our true power and authority in the now moment. So let's keep going. I see only the past. It is the reason why you are never upset for the reason you think. So there's this aspect in A Course in Miracles that speaks to, you know, the reason why you're getting upset now is very much linked to, again, because we're seeing what we have experienced in the past in the now. And so we're projecting that into or onto the present moment, onto the people, places, and things in our environments. And so again, it's like we're Houdini. We are Houdini. But as long as Houdini is stuck in that straitjacket, you're gravity bound. You're not free, sovereign, levitating. It is the reason why you are upset, because you see something that is not there. Again, how often do we create metaphysically? We create our pain. We create the continuation of the pain, of the negative patterns, addictions, habits, conditionings, etc., by, on one hand, just not even being conscious that there is another way, that we have a choice, that we can change them. You know, often we'll just stumble around in life and be blown around like a tumbleweed until we like bump into a healer, or we go in to take that yoga class, or we, you know, have some kind of a mystical experience that we bump into ourselves in our truest light. And we burn off some of those layers of those elusive tar body factors that then allow us to remember our truth, to remember that the past is not real and it does not have to define who we are now and our experience in the now. And once those things, that gravity of those aspects are released, there is that levity, that in the world and not of it, that release. You don't have to grasp and control life and people and places and try to make things happen the way that you think you need to. That is so exhausting. And there is a divine balance of showing up, of sending the email, of making that call, of going to that audition, of whatever it is, as you're divinely guided, right? From spirit, from source, from divine, from God, from love. Yet that is a very different paradigm. That is a very different paradigm of co-creating your reality than of just allowing, of just listening and creating the correct conditions for when you do get that nudge from Holy Spirit, or that tap on your shoulder from your angels, or whatever name you would give it, to move forth in whatever direction. Old ideas about time are very difficult to change because everything you believe is rooted in time and depends on your not learning these new ideas about it. Yet that is precisely why you need new ideas about time. This first time idea is not really so strange as it may sound at first. Look at a cup, for example. Do you see a cup, or are you merely reviewing your past experiences of picking up a cup, being thirsty, drinking from a cup, feeling the rim of a cup against your lips, having breakfast, and so on? Are not your aesthetic reactions to the cup too based on past experiences? How else would you know whether or not this kind of cup will break if you drop it? What do you know about this cup except what you learned in the past? I see only the past. You would have no idea what this cup is except for your past learning. Do you then really see it at all? Is it really here? Is it really here? You know, so this is it. This is it. We're moving out of that stuff. And even if there's not even like heavy pain stuff in the past, even as we get clearer and clearer, just our ability to drop it, all of the thoughts that we might give rise to that could limit the experience of the now. Oh, we become a ninja. We become like, nope, cut that, place love there, release that. That doesn't serve me. This does not allow me to have levity, to gain a levitative experience of life. Because remember, as we are bound by the gravity of the grids and this collective matrix of consciousness, we have only a certain level of perception. You've heard of this story, right? These spiritual stories where you say like, oh, you start your spiritual, your spiritual growth path, and you start on the first floor and you're like, wow, this is cool. There's like quartz crystal ground tiles, and there's beautiful stained glass windows, and it's just beautiful, and I feel good. And then, you grow spiritually, you heal, you meditate, you do your practices. And then you're like on the third or fourth floor and you're like, whoa, you look out the window and you're like, oh my God, this view is outstanding. I can see, I can feel, I can sense more and more and more. And then you rise, you keep going, you keep ascending, and you go up to the 7th, the 10th, the 11th floor, whatever, however many floors you want. The higher up you get, the more levity you gain. And the more levity you gain, the greater becomes your perception. The greater becomes your perception. And eventually, as A Course in Miracles teaches, is that what you learn how to be a badass with your perceptual lenses in choosing love over fear. Because as you do this work, you realize that choosing those fear-based thoughts, those things that are going to keep you in the past and keep pain real in the now that really doesn't exist, only as long as you allow it to and keep it there and keep it real, right? It doesn't matter unless you make it matter. That all of those things keep you gravity bound into the world. And where are we going? We're going into 4D consciousness, which is aligning mind, body, and emotions with spirit, that we become the bridge that naturally connects heaven and earth through us. And we take that wherever we go. And so it moves from, we become a perceptual lens ninja. We become a ninja at catching our thoughts and our words, and being a master of our time and space, and placing love, rethreading love through all of that. And what happens is eventually we no longer perceive, especially as you give your life to love, give your life to God, give your life to the Most High, whatever name you would give source, divine, that is without an opposite, or what that is, love and only love, is that you break out of perception, you break out of perceiving, and you gain vision. And that vision is that unity consciousness, is the oneness, is the wholeness, is the wholeness. So before I get back into my notes, I will continue with your offering, Mike, here, this comment on YouTube, speaking about that divine matrix. So in that sense, we use those perceptual lenses. We choose love over and over again until it becomes such a deep groove, such a deep set of grids that we are connected to, that we become carried by that love. And ultimately, yes, there is a path, there is a point where we go beyond. If I'm understanding your question correctly, there is a point where we go beyond the grid. And that is where we're going. That's where I'm welcoming and inviting us all to connect collectively as we are guided by spirit, by heart, by truth, is to connect into that 4D consciousness that is without the grids as we've known them. We are creating together new grids where love and only love reside. We are creating together a paradigm, a dimensionality of consciousness that is rooted in the heart. And we can call it Christ consciousness. We can call it truth, unity consciousness, heaven on earth realization. But it is not the you that exists as the small self in the world. It is the you that exists with the capital S, that is living your true power and authority. That being love in everything you do, in every step you walk, in every breath you take. And so in a sense, there is an agreement there, Mike. And I just want to read over your question again so I make sure that I'm covering it. Would it be accurate to say that the divine matrix doesn't exist in an absolute sense, and that one requirement of true healing is to not identify yourself completely with it? So again, because you said divine, if you would have just said matrix, I would say yes, simple answer. But because you said divine matrix, there is that aspect of using the divinity within the grid matrix system to plug into love, to strengthen our own ability to hold that voltage of love and of light, that we be carried by it. And so we can use either aspect, if there is that aspect, which there is, because in the grid matrix of collective consciousness, as we teach it, that is the binary system. That's the storehouse of all duality of love versus fear. And when we shift that tipping point in the way of love over fear, and we heal ourselves, and we get out of the funky gunky, we transmute the fear, the pain, the shame, all the stuff that collects when we don't do our healing work, when we've had enough and we're ready to start healing, and we start healing, and boom, the light body activates those chakras, all of the energy systems that are a part of this divine chariot and vehicle that we travel in on this earth become activated. And so I pray that that serves you, that ultimately, yeah, ultimately, this is us, Mike, and everyone that this resonates with. This is us. It's love. This is you. This is a picture of you. And this is us in the world. And as I shared last week, it's not that we are trying to exit the matrix, that we are just wanting to blow that shit up. It's not that. Maybe it might be that. It might start off as this, right? If we're raging against the machine. But there is an eloquent aspect that begins to happen again once we shift enough of our perceptions and we gain vision, where we simply realize that we are not this anyway. We're not that. We realize we are this. Yet, while we're still in a body on this planet, we have one foot in the world. We learn how to master the matrix. And in that way, we are granted a natural exit from the gravity of the grid, from the gravity of the matrix. So we have one foot in the matrix and one foot in heaven on earth, say. because we are bridging heaven on earth. So we learn again to be in the world and not of it, not dragged down, not held down gravitationally by the grids of the past, by the teachings, by the things that we're told about the world, all the things that we're told to be afraid of. My God, there's so many of them, you know, but that's okay. That's what the world does. That's what the world is here to do. That's part of the training here. But as soon as we get with that and we realize like, oh, this is just, it's just the world is just doing its job. And so what job am I going to allow myself to participate in this grand design, in this divine matrix? I'm going to, yes, I'm going to find the divinity in this matrix. I'm not just going to sit here and bash the matrix, because there's love and there's fear. And the more that I plug into that divinity of the matrix, the more that I find love, place love, be love, channel love, choose love. Remember, that's our spiritual will. Your ability to choose love over and 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 over again. That's a muscle. That's your spiritual will. And your ability to do so is what gives you that strengthening ability to gain levitation and to stay levitated. Right? So we're not just saying, fuck the world, you know, we're saying, honey, let's transmute this planet, not by trying to change all the stuff on this planet, but by creating that divine alchemy within the self, first and foremost. And what does that always come down to? That always comes back to learning to love ourselves. That's the true alchemist. When you really study alchemy, and believe me, I'm not a scholar of this, but I'm an intuitive scholar of these aspects, of these metaphysics. And from healing my own life, we know that we become an alchemist. We learn how to turn the dross, the heavy metals that keep us gravity bound in this world. We learn how to alchemate, how to turn that pain into power, you know, how to turn that pain into love. And then that to turn that lead into gold, so to speak. And then, but there's the next step. It's not just turning lead into gold. Because that's moving from gravity to levity. But what about, you want to keep levitating, right? You don't just want to keep going up and down, up and down. Although we do, as we're growing spiritually and we go through those healing cycles, we're like, yay! And then we're like, oh, and hey, and oh, you know. There's dark and there's light. There's dark and there's light. There's dark and there's light. And it's a journey. And we each have our own divine path with that. But ultimately, it's what do you do with that gold once you've made it? And I think that's a term for another 4DT. So I pray that that has served you, Mike, and that allows you to gain an understanding of where I'm teaching from. You understood and explained it perfectly. Wow, you have a wonderful gift to teach these concepts in a clear and concise way that makes sense immediately. Thank you for who you are. That's very, very kind, Mike. Thank you. And I have to take my socks off and drink some water. So my YouTube family knows that these 4D Trinity live streams can often go on over an hour, sometimes over 2. And I believe since last week, my first experience on Instagram, and blessings everyone on Instagram, I'm so very grateful. Thank you so much for your comments and your love and just being here and supporting me and these teachings and this show. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All blessings, Dean's here. Everybody's here. So the YouTubers know that I can just go on. We're very organic here on this show and what I share. And so anyway, the Instagram live stream completes itself every hour. So there will be an ending point where the Instagram will stop and I'll have to press go live again. So just so you know, if you're into it, come back later, watch the rest if you're on Instagram, or just stay with me. I'm going to click that button as this chunk ends and we'll continue. What I do want to continue on, though, are these notes that I had. Magnetic levitation. And this is where I would love to talk to Frequency Jam about this. Magnetic levitation is one example of levitation in physics. We mean that if an object, or in this case, a magnet, is displaced by a small amount, a force will be there. A force will be there. A force will be there to counteract this movement and push or pull the object back to its levitating position. A force will be there. Speaking about this in terms of our spirituality and metaphysics, that force is love. When we give it the right of way, that force is love. Now, and I also thought, well, this is interesting. Let's look up this idea, this word duality. And so on the Google, just when you throw in a word and you say, definition, duality, the quality or condition of being dual. And then it goes on. In mathematics, the property of two theorems, expressions of being dual to each other. In physics, the quantum mechanical property of being regardable as both a wave and a particle. So I thought, well, this is interesting because as you go on, there's dualism, duplexivity, dichotomy, polarity, separation, opposition, difference. And these are all those words that resonate with the binary consciousness, with the aspects that are great until you realize there's more. They can really work for you. This bumping off of, riffing off of love versus fear. Yet when you realize there's more, you realize like, well, geez, do I really want to stay in this existence of dichotomy, polarity, separation, opposition, and difference? There's another way. So then anyway, I looked up singularity, which is the state, fact, quality, or condition of being singular. Uniqueness, distinctiveness, difference, which is interesting, individuality. And then in physics, a point at which a function takes an infinite value, especially in space-time. Space-time, when matter is infinitely dense, as at the center of a black hole. Now, I don't really know about black holes. I could meditate and channel some stuff, but we're not gonna go there right now. But what I love is that it's singularity, a point at which a function, which is love, takes an infinite value, especially in space-time, when matter is infinitely dense. So density is equal to gravity. Density is equal to all that tar. It's all that stuff that we get stuck to. When you get all stuck and gunked up with just stuff, and you're like, it's like, I need a healing. I need to go to a sweat lodge or to a Reiki session or to the mineral spas and go soak, or to nature and just unplug, whatever it is, those things that allow us to move out of that realm and regain that sense of levity, regain that sense of activation, and release the tars so that we can renew and revitalize the light body, right? Which is always a reflection of spirit, always a reflection of spirit. So, oh yes, and what I wanted to say about that specific little definition, that's singularity, the physics/mathematics definition that I got off the Google, is, there's this quote that Marianne Williamson said recently, and it speaks to, when you give your life to God. And again, I know people who have been indoctrinated with religious stuff, God can have a knee-jerk reaction. Yet the invitation is to just think of it as love without an opposite. It's not someone that's telling you what to do. It's not this person or this being that is manipulating you. It is the grace of love that takes place through you when the you that you think you are moves out of the way. So she spoke to, in something recent, she spoke to that we are lifted above the laws of time and space because we create the law. We create the law. Again, we bring the past into the present and into the future through the words we speak and the thoughts we think. And as I teach here at 4D Trinity and the Heaven on Earth teachings, again, every word you speak is creating your experience of time. And every thought you think is holding space for the words that you speak and creating the correct conditions for you to have that reality be. So your word, the sound that you speak, that's a vibration. And you are exciting molecules, atoms, protons, neutrons, electrons, all of that stuff. You're giving rise to those things coming to pass, to those realities being. And if you are on your spiritual path and you are getting a sense of how quick this happens, because you see, the thing that happens is that the less you're gunked down. Okay, so now I'm seeing that Instagram is going to be ending here in less than 30 seconds, so I will hit it again. So please, if you're enjoying this, thank you everyone on Instagram I'm so very touched and grateful for your support. But I will be clicking and I'll be coming back here very shortly. It's going to count down here. But so as we get rid and we heal and seal the deal and forgive and forget and release those grids of pain that keep us bound to the past, we turn that light body on. And again, we are set free to gain way into the levitational qualities. And pardon me, my YouTube family, I'm just going over here to Instagram Live and I'm going to recalibrate. Okay, blessings, we're back in. Woo! We're back in at Instagram. So thank you again, everyone. So yes, so we are lifted above the laws of time and space, because everything that you think and everything that you speak, you are laying down the railroad tracks for yourself of how you are going to experience your reality. So you're either going to experience it through lack, through fear, through pain, through punishment, through being a victim, or through the words you speak and the thoughts you think. You're going to lay down those railroad tracks of love, of light, of expansion, of being receptive, of intuitive knowing, of manifesting, not by you manipulating time and space, but by you creating the correct conditions within you through conscious use of time and space, through mindful mastery of your word, of your mouth, the tip of your tongue, the vibration that you set forth through the atomic structures that you are and that surrounds you, to give rise to all of those divine blessings that you seek to experience, to be added unto you. And we spoke about this last week with the law of vibration versus the law of attraction. I know that last week's YouTube, I had it with a different setting. I'm back onto the couch here this week because I was trying a different location, and the lighting, especially for my YouTube fam, was not very good. So we're back on the couch. So I want to continue here, though, so we can lift ourselves from the laws of time and space. We can create new laws for ourselves through conscious word, conscious thought, and conscious deed, and conscious thought. So singularity, let's think about this again for a moment. Mathematical singularity, a point at which a given mathematical object is not defined or not well behaved. For example, infinite or non-differentiable. See, and this is where there's these big words, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm an intuitive. These big words, what do they even mean? And so I need my gang here, my Bosnacity, my Muppet Finder, my Frequency Jam, my team here to bridge some more wisdom to me as I bring this to you. So I enjoy and I look forward to having these conversations with you further, my friends. But it's interesting, right? Because if we think about this, a point at which a given mathematical object, and say that you are the mathematical object, I am that object, is not defined and not well behaved, because, well, in the world, we are taught to behave. We are given, again, the grid structure. We are given the stories, the conditions, the patterns, the everything that we need ultimately, right, to begin to live. That's how we all start off, with a little lunch pack that says, you know, you're from this culture, you're this color, you're this religion, you have these beliefs, you know, and so we grow up with that until we maybe get to a certain point. Oh, boom, blessings, Will, thank you for hopping on. Until we get to that point where we realize, like, you know, maybe some of that resonates as a truth, but then the other part of that doesn't resonate as a truth. And then we go find ourselves. We go find ourselves. And then what happens is that when you really start to release those ties that have bound you to who you thought you were, you can no longer be defined. Why? Because you're not operating. You're not operating under those laws of time and space. People say, you've changed. You look different. You're not acting the same. And you're like, that's right, because I'm in love now. Right? You're like, yeah, that's right. Because I got love now. I realize love. I am different because love lives within me now. And so metaphysically, when you are truly attuned with love, I say this all the time, you are unfuckable with. Your spirit is unfuckable with. When you are attuned and allow your life, every step of your life, to be guided from that place of love, you are simply bridging heaven on earth every moment of your existence. And it is always for the highest good, and is always connecting the dots of divinity, of your divinity, with others' divinity, just like that collective kundalini we were talking about earlier in the first half of this. Now, I went ahead and I looked up the word dual because of duality. And it's interesting because consists of two parts, elements, or aspects. And isn't it funny? Because in the definition, it has binary. And I was like all excited about that. I was like, oh, there it goes. Binary, double, twofold, paired, coupled, binate, right? The antonym is single, right? Singularity. And why am I even talking about this? I'm talking about this because when thine eye becomes single. When you know that love is the truth, when you know that you are an extension of that, love without an opposite, not I'm going to be nice and be loving, but in an instant I could flip and I could fucking cut you. And pardon my language, but I'm just making a point, a very drastic, dramatic point at that. But it's that tendency where you can flip like that. And what happens is that as you bridge greater and greater volumes of love, greater and greater volumes of grace in you, through you, and to you, what happens is that switcheroo-ness of self begins to dissolve. And you begin to understand that you can relax in the singularity of love and only love. You begin to realize that it's okay, that it's safe to be loved, to feel love, to express love, to give love. And that's a very different reality. That's a very different experience to be had. So singularity in this term for today, speaking of levitation, speaking of levity versus gravity, where we have thine eye being single. And remember, if you've studied with me over the years, when I teach about the chakras, what are the chakras? They are eyeballs. They are energetic eyeballs. What is your aura? It is one big eyeball. And me and Will were talking about this the other night, where it's like, if you've ever seen or seen that metaphor of like a fly, and how flies have those eyes that are like the honeycomb little pockets that they see through. And imagine there's like that paradigm, that metaphor of your aura, where there's these little honeycomb pockets. And the more that you break through and you clean where there had been the tars, where there had been the filters had been dirtied from pain, from the past, from trauma, from fear, from this, just the stories, just the things didn't even have to have happened to you in this life. But if you watch enough news and believe it, and the media and the stuff that's really polarized and swings you and pushes your buttons and emotionally triggers you, you begin to believe that, well, that's the gravity of the grids, and that's going to keep you bound into thinking that that duality is the truth. But again, as you clean, you clear, you heal, you forgive, you bless, you just relax. Those tendencies to have those swings become less and less, and you begin to feel comfortable. You begin to feel safe. You begin to feel a new sense of grounding in your body, again, which allows the Kundalini, which allows the levitational aptitude that is your inherent birthright to activate. Just like the story I told at the very beginning of this with the friend who called me up and who said she's ready to die, she's ready to leave, to get out of here. She's been suffering with depression for more than half of her life. The moment that she allowed herself to call all her friends and tell them that this is my truth, actually. I've been hiding, I've been ashamed to express that I've been living in this dark cloud for the majority of my life. But here I am, I'm telling you, the moment that she just told it like it is, and she has suicidal tendencies. She's like ready to just split any moment, like any moment now. Like I could call her and like, I don't even know if she's still gonna be here. It's that deep. But the moment that she expressed her truth, it's like that dark cloud of depression couldn't hide anymore. Boom! And it cleared the way for her light body to resume that levity, to resume her not feeling bound by the gravity of depression. Because remember, when we plug in, whether it's depression or financial freedom, whatever it is that we plug into individually from our individual grid threads, we plug into the collective, what you put out, you receive back infinite fold. Because I'm not only plugging into this collective grid matrix with my little thread of what I define depression, or what my experiences of depression and sadness and all that grief and all that stuff is, but I'm plugging into the greater strata of every single person who's ever existed in this universe through all time, space, dimensions, many lifetimes fold over. I'm plugging into all of their considerations, agreements, contracts, definitions, etc., experiences of that. So that's heavy bevy. The moment she spoke it and she said, hey, this is my truth, this is what I've been going through, and she let that go, she was actually able to live. She lightened her load. She gained a levity. And so even though that depression is still a thing with her, it didn't just disappear overnight. It's a reality for her. But even though that is still with her, and this feeling of like, I just want to get out of here. I'm done with this life. That still walks with her. But her ability to relax now and to just be her true depressed self. I mean, girl, if that's what's up, then be it. Have that experience. But her ability to express and to tell all of us her truth gave her levity. And now she's able to be in the world and not of it. Now, in an ironic, weird way, she's sovereign. Even though she's still ready to leave at any moment, she is more sovereign than she has been her whole life because she's living her truth. Interesting, right? So singularity versus duality. Okay, I have a few more notes here. Okay, so I want to read you something. Oh, let's see. Oh, Life is a Meditation Within Itself is back on YouTube. So I'm going to read this. I just let go. So this is a comment from Life is a Meditation Within Itself on YouTube. I just let go of my mom. I realize it was poetry on a deeper level, but it's definitely emotional release day. It's definitely emotional release day. The angel of death brings the flaming sword of truth, the greatest teacher failure is. Everything is coming into alignment. Well, friend, I don't know if this letting go of your mother is because she actually had a physical death. My heart goes out to you if that is the case. My heart goes out to you either way. Maybe you've just cut cords and you've let this person go from your life. And you yourself, in whatever way, whether it was a physical death or otherwise, you are feeling a certain sovereignty and freedom from it. And the healing that is now allowed to take place from that release, from that, ironic enough, that separation, right? There is then this relinquishing so that things can reconnect in a higher order and for the highest good. And thank you, Instagram family. Thank you for hopping back on with me. This is part 2 of our live stream, 4D Trinity, today, every Thursday, just as a reminder for my Instagram family, because this is new, what I'm doing here. Every Thursday, I go live with my show, 4D Trinity. I've been doing it for over a year on YouTube, and just now for the second week, I'm bridging both. So I've got 2 little cameras here to look at. And so thank you, everyone, for your support on Instagram. I'm so very grateful. And may every single thing I share with you serve your true sovereign path of spiritual growth. Absolutely, absolutely. So tension. There are different types of tension. And I wanted to read this to you. So I shared with you all about Will. And Will, if you're just hopping on, you'll have to, which I think you are, you'll have to go back later. And I know you always do. Listen to the whole thing. But I was sharing a bit about you. So anyway, I go to the library and I'm guided to bring this book home, Hildegard, right? Hildegard von Bingen, right? Am I saying it correctly? I don't even know what to say about her. Basically, she is a channel of God's nectar. And I'll leave it at that. If you know who she is, then you're familiar. But I want to read to you from this. It's so interesting because I brought this book home. I was very guided to bring it home. And instantly, Will picks it up and he starts reading out loud just all of these passages. And we're both like almost in tears because the words are just so, I mean, it is. It's the nectar. It's just the divine nectar. And I will say that it is by Renate Crane. And so Renate's ability to channel and to regurgitate and display the teachings of Hildegard are just exquisite. And I wanted to read to you because this word tension came up with regarding this levity versus gravity theme that we're talking about today. And there's this passage that Will was reading for us recently, and I want to read this to you. The entire universe, the cosmos, manifests the mystery of this fiery, ever-living light of love that shines forth in and through matter, in and through human beings, in their specific history. Wishes and protects those that is God. I just love this. But interesting as well that this word willingness shows up, because next week's 4D Trinity, we will be speaking, the theme for next week's 4D Trinity is, oh, this is interesting. On both sides, on the YouTube and on the Instagram, it seems like there's a little, oh, Mercury retrogradeness. I've totally blacked out. I've totally blacked out on both Instagram and on YouTube. So I pray that this just carries on and that you heard what I read there. And what I'm talking about is this mystical tension that exists. And what I was saying before the tellies blacked out there is that the theme of next week's 4D Trinity is the metaphysics of willingness. So to get into this tension, I looked tension up because this has to do with our levity versus gravity. Tight, especially, or causing strain or discomfort. The strained state or condition resulting from forces acting in opposition to each other. And then it goes on and on and on, right? Mental, emotional strain, anxiety, pressure, stress, nervousness, restlessness, uncertainty, anticipation, twitchiness, all this stuff, right? And again, I love this, that the antonym is relaxation. It's the relaxation is your medicine for tension. But the tension I'm speaking of, and the tension that I feel that Hildegard von Bingen and Renate, as she was channeling and regurgitating those teachings, speaks to this divine tension. It's this space that we come to, again, that gives us levity. It is not a tension that causes strain, but it is a tension that is your willingness to surrender over and over and over again to being held, to being lifted, to defying gravity in the 3D. There is a certain tension. There are layers of tension, because there's this first tension where we hold on and where we think this world is real. And so we want to grasp on to people, places, and things. And we say, no, 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 don't die. No, 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 don't go. Oh, money, money, money. Oh, don't go, don't go, don't go. What am I going to be without you? Person, place, thing, experience, whatever it is, right? And that's why we have, as a collective, this notion of forgiving without forgetting. But what I teach here, and I know we did a whole 4DT on this before, is learning then this next level of forgiving and forgetting. Because as long as you remember, and especially if we remember with polarity and with pain, then we're still gravity held, we're still gravity bound. So if someone did you wrong, and you have pain about them, and you have issues, and you never confronted them, and you never spoke it out, and you never prayed on it, and you never gave it to God, and you never just forgave it or whatever, and you still walk with that, because it goes with you everywhere you go. Everything that you have not digested emotionally and processed energetically and healed or began to heal energetically, it walks with you wherever you go. You know what I like to think about? I like to think about that character in Charlie Brown that has that aura that's all, you know, it's just all staticky and dark and muddy, kind of like our tar body person here. You know, that's the more that we just collect all that stuff without creating the correct conditions for that to be cleansed and cleared and purified. All of that walks with us wherever we go. And that's why we feel people's energy. We feel the vibration, right? The heaviness. So you can see it on people's faces, but also you can feel it energetically, or the lightness. You can sense if someone is living in the gravity of the world, of like thinking the world is real, of thinking that bills are real. And believe me, I know they are to a degree, but of thinking that you have to figure it out versus allowing and making space for the divine to help create the correct conditions for the correct solutions and opportunities to present themselves, so that under grace, the correct circumstances abide, whereby things work themselves out and everything is added unto you. And it's a very different switcheroo, but that's a part of the initiation. As we were talking earlier, it's not just being an alchemist and turning your pain into power. That's step one. That's step one of just learning how to love ourselves, learning how to forgive and forget and release the stories that keep us gravity bound into the world and thinking the world is real. And it's as real as long as you want it to be. And I'm not here to tell you that you need to think like me at all. I'm just sharing that there are other ways to consider and to define and to realize your experience. And I'm here to also share with you that heaven on earth is a very real and true experience right now. And it actually lives in the now. And that's why levity versus gravity, there's this wonderful aspect of the more that you heal the past and you truly forgive, especially those things that have really marked you, those people that have really, those experiences that have really hurt you or caused you pain, or where, you know, blessings to all those that have experienced the infliction of, you know, that 3D, that physical violent pain. And I don't wish any of that on anyone. Yet what I'm saying is that once there's that healing and that tipping point has shifted to such that degree that you walk without the gravity of those grids and with a new story and let love lead the way, you are free. If you've ever seen that Angelina Jolie movie that she produced and directed, Unbreakable, I believe I have the name correct. I mean, talk about, and if you've watched like the whole, you know, the movie is like badass and just amazing in itself. And then the end, there's like the documentary part. You can get the extended director's version where she's interviewing the guy who goes through all this stuff, where he was in a prisoner of war camp and he was just, there was one guard that just had it in for him and that just, you know, just treated him. I mean, he was already a prisoner, but that had it in for him and that treated him especially brutally and really focused on specific violent acts and manipulation and just all this stuff towards this one character. Well, it ends up that the war is over, that guy gets free, the prisoner breaks free, everyone's free, the war is over, everything's great. And the guy who was the prisoner heals so deeply, forgives so truly, and is willing to forget the pain that he had experienced with this individual so absolutely that he actually goes on a quest to find the prisoner ward who taunted him and who bullied him and who, you know, was violent towards him for many, many years in that war camp. And he sought him out so that he can tell him himself, I forgive you, so that he could make peace, so that he could see him. And the war prisoner couldn't handle it. He didn't, even though he was still alive, he made every move that he could not to come face to face with that individual that he had treated so badly. Now, I forget why I'm even telling you this. Oh, because it is that forgiving. This person who was this, who could have just lived the rest of his days as a victim, who could have just blamed this prisoner guard for his whole life being crap and just, you know, or why he had to turn into, you know, transmitting that violence onto others and holding that as reality for him. He transmuted it. He turned that lead into gold, but he not only just turned it into gold, he learned how to levitate, how to allow that gold to give him that levitational power to be in the world and not of it, where the story was no longer the gravitational pull of those grids, were no longer the story, the truth that he lived by. He lived by a new truth, and that truth set him free. Free to the point where he was looking for the guy who beat the gosh darn out of him on repeat for many years in that war camp and wanted to make amends and make peace with him. So this is the extent where we are invited to truly, what does the Bible say? I don't know. I'm not a Bible student. I do enjoy it, you know, passages that I hear. And if you know me, I talk often on the radio. When you get in the car, there's the hip hop, the gangster rap, the NPR, the couple of Jesus stations, and then there's like the heavy metal station. Like, that's what I do. I listen to all of it. I listen to all of it. And so there's conversations and passages from, you know, biblical quotes and things that I love just mixing in with all of these other teachings. But there's something that speaks to, and Bible people will really know this better than I, so forgive me if I don't say it correctly, but forgive those who trespass against us, you know? It's just like, and that's the crux of A Course in Miracles. That's the medicine of A Course in Miracles, is your ability to just drop that judgment, to forgive, and as a constant. And the more acute you become at being mindful of where your thoughts, without your mindful conscious awareness, where they might go and how they might link you through the grid matrix of collective consciousness to the greater whole of everyone else who has those negative thoughts or those gravity-ridden polarities and duality in belief and patterns. When you connect with all that, right, that's just holding you down. That's creating more of the same. And so the training in A Course in Miracles is that constant ability to forgive. Forgive yourself, forgive others. And what does that do? That dissolves those timelines. Last week, I talked about that movie Inception, just as that metaphor of like those buildings just falling. All those buildings in those cities that we build, that are built on the blame, on the shame, on being a victim or of hate or of fear or of, you know, all the stuff. those all begin to dissolve, leaving, they all begin to dissolve, leaving the truth. And what is the truth? It is love. It is love. And when you really get to know who you are in the light of that love, you change. You become your true essence. And in fact, do we really change? But we simply release the stories that have clouded the vision of our ability to see our full truth, to be and embody that fearlessly, unabashedly. And that we step out of the way and we let love lead, we let love guide, we let love rule and show us where to go, what to do, who to talk to, what to say, and to whom. Thank you again, everyone on Instagram. I'm so grateful. And there's comments here on YouTube, so I'm going to go ahead and have a look. Excuse me. Life is a meditation within itself, says yeah. At this point, it's getting impossible to not see the illusion of separation. Eating meat sometimes just to ground myself. It's so disorienting. I know there are better ways, though. And yeah, the death, I'm starting to intuit we never go anywhere. Right. It's all continuation, life and death. Yeah, I can feel it a lot more now. I'm in the belly of the whale, but I just try to come more and more to non-judgment. That's beautiful. Yes, absolutely. And you know, this whole idea about eating meat. Well, are we even going to go there? That's like a whole other show. There comes a point where we have less and less specific definitions about things. And again, I think this will be a show that we'll do specifically. And I did one on duality versus polarity. I'll have to come back and put links up here for my YouTube people. And if you're on Insta and you're not on the YouTube with me, please subscribe. I've got over 60 of these shows cataloged, and I have my weekly meditation, or pardon me, the weekly tarot. There's a whole meditation playlist. There's all sorts of juicy stuff for our spiritual growth and sovereignty. But there is a point where you have dropped the judgment and the need to label and identify things as good or bad or right or wrong, where that just so disappears that all you're doing, again, is you're just doing what you're guided to do by God, by love. And so if love says, eat that steak today, you have no mind about it. You're simply on standby, aligning with and doing what is guided for your highest good, especially if in your prayers, your meditation at the beginning of the day, or whenever it is that you create that set point, right? Divine, Holy Spirit, my angels, my guides, whatever word you give it, God, source, love, universe, guide me, show me. My angels, show me what my perfect diet is for this day of my physical body being at its optimal health. And if you're guided to do that, you'll do that. And if you are aware, though, that you're moving into a realm of being aware that you're going, why am I eating meat? I know vibrationally this is perhaps keeping me a certain level of gravity boundness, because especially if it's not organic, nice if the cows weren't petted nicely and spoken to nicely, you know, we know all these aspects, that all that stress and the fear and the pain and all that stuff goes into the meat, and we eat that, and then we get to digest and process that along with our own stuff. But if you have no mind about it, and if you're simply doing what you're guided to do, then you can eat and digest quite rapidly and receive the nourishment and retain the grounding or whatever it is that you're supposed to receive from that, right? As well, I know plenty of people. There was a yoga teacher I used to study yoga with, 3-hour class on a Sunday out in Brooklyn back in the day. Loved him. John, I won't say his last name. After class, he would go out and he'd set up the barbecue, and he'd be like eating like weird, like kangaroo and buffalo, and like he was just into the meat, but he was this full-on yoga teacher. And so that got some criticism and some like from the people. But he's like, this is what I do. This is how I sustain myself. This is, for me, this is my vibrational match for now. And until I'm guided otherwise, this feels good to me. This feels real to me. And he prays and he blesses the meat and da 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 da, whatever it makes him feel good about it. And he moves forward and he doesn't think twice about it. And so I have the whole passage in my book. For my YouTubers, and I know my Insta, it's a different feed on my main page where there's my website link, but on the YouTube, down in the show more box, there's links to all of my books, my Instagram, my website, all this stuff. But my book, The Reiki Apprentice, there's a story in it. Speaking of this with the meat and the polarities of things, and then we'll wrap up here shortly. But there's a story in it where I speak about, and by the way, this is it's my autobiography up until I was in my early 30s. And it speaks to how I learned to turn my pain, how I learned to alchemate my pain into power, my pain into love, and heal myself and become healthy and learn the baseline of metaphysics, the baseline of the grid teachings that I share. And I learned how to be a master of my time and space. And you get to go with me along my whole journey. I call it Eat, Pray, Love on Acid, because there's backpacking adventures. They're very mystical adventures with a lot of LSD. But I also call it Carlos Castaneda meets Shirley MacLaine, because it speaks to that out on a limb, you know, because there's trans-channel metaphysics in it, multidimensional teachings. And there's also very interesting mystical teachings specific to manipulation, energy manipulation, and really holding your own space, and a teacher-student relationship. So if this is of interest to you, and I know I have some really dear friends and folks on Instagram that don't know me, but that are like reading the book, that have gone out and bought the book. And so thank you, thank you. Point is, for years, all I did was not care about anything. And then I started to care about, you know, using or not using aluminum pans, what's in my deodorant, what am I putting on my skin. And my girl, Ari Michelle here on Instagram, she was a big part of that. We were roommates in New York back in the day, in Washington Heights, way before the Heights is the Heights that it is now. And she was a big inspiration in that way, where I was like, yeah, getting into like, really, what am I putting in my body? What am I putting inside my body? And so switched to the organic tampon. And so I got so into the organic tampon and like only using organic tampons that's all I used. So cut to, I'm backpacking in Australia and I'm hiking in the bush. And the monthly gift of the cycle comes along, the moon cycle comes along. And I realize that I don't have an organic tampon. I don't have anything with me. There's another girl in the team that we're doing our hike with, and she's like, oh, I tell her, I was like, do you have something? And she's like, oh, and she gives me a Tampax. And I was just like, like, I remember she handed it to me and I was like, oh my God. And I freaked out, and I had this whole story. And all of these stories about how this thing is going to cause cervical cancer, about how I'm going to die if I use it. And meanwhile, very graphic, blood is, you know, rolling down my leg, and I'm in the middle of the bush, and there's nothing I can do. And I'm like looking at this tampon going like, I hate you. You're going to kill me. I'm not going to put you in my, having this whole back and forth with it. So anyway, that's that. Years later, or the next year, I'm studying with my teacher, the Grand Reiki master in the book, who is also a trance channel. And I apprenticed with her, and all that apprenticeship is in the book. And again, here's my moon cycle, and I'm at her place, and I'm like, oh, do you have something like, and I'm thinking just a maxi pad, like, let's not just even go near the tampon thing. Go into the bathroom, and she throws me the tampon, and it's again like a mainstream tampon, and I'm like, like again, having this heart attack, because I'm feeling like the meat, potentially, like all the things that we've created stories and polarities about, I'm projecting onto this little cotton bud. You know, you've got, you know, just all these chemicals in you, and you've been bleached, and you're synthetic, and you're not real. And it's so going to harm my temple if I put you inside of me. Da, da. And my teacher was just like, she did the total Jedi. And she really helped me to turn a corner. And I'm praying that perhaps this offers all of us, whether it's a tampon or a steak or whatever it is for you, that there's that corner of turning when you become a metaphysician, when you decide that you're going to start to not be a victim and become an alchemist of the now moment and activate your power in the now, given your circumstances. Now, I could have said, no, I'm just going to grab a bundle of tissues, and my girls know what I'm talking about, or whatever. And I know the guys are like, what? But yeah, we're all mature people here. So I'll continue and finish the story. And I remember she just did the Jedi, and she's like, explain to me that everything is energy and that everything is vibration. And that exactly what I think and I believe is this tampon is exactly the design of the matter of the molecular structure that is activated in it as I hold it in my hand now, and that will be as I put it inside my body. And she allowed me to think about it differently. And she reminded me, she's like, hello, you do Reiki. Hello, you're a healer. Hello, you're not of this world. And in that instant, I had this realization, and I realized, oh my gosh, I've been putting so much story into these tampons, anything mainstream tampon grid. I've been like, you're bad and you're evil and I'm never, and you're going to hurt me and I'm going to get cancer and just all these things that by the time I was confronted with it, I was like shaking and not a master in my true right and feeling like just at my knees in the presence of a Tampax tampon. And so like that, I took that little tampon and I held it in my hand and I was like, whew, and I just placed love there. And I remember just allowing Reiki to flow through to help transform all the polarity that I had put in that little cotton bud, bolita de algodón, as myself and Will would say about Moses, Swami Origami, and Toot. And I had the experience, the actual metaphysical experience where I felt the grids, the stories that I had been carrying and harboring and all the polarities, I felt all those, like Inception, all those buildings fall away. And then at that moment, the tampon, the Tampax was not all these things, but it was love. And it was in that moment that I was a master. It was in that moment that I realized that my environment is alive and responds to my perception of it. Now, granted, my friend with the steak, I still love organic tampons and I will use them and buy them all the time, everywhere that I can. Yet the cycle is broken now. If I'm ever in a bind where I'm like, oh, it's that time of the month. Do you have a, hey girl, or hey, Jim, or wherever I might be, do you guys have a tampon or whatever? And if it's a mainstream, I'm not like having heart palpitations and falling on the floor. I'm like Jedi. I'm like, thank you very much. I place love here. And so it is. And let's just move on. So I know that was a little bit of a long story trajectory, but it points to everything being energy. And what story we place on it, whether it's a person, whether it's a thing, whatever it is, the story we place onto it is either going to, on one hand, plug us into the story of the collective, which is either going to serve in gaining us levity, serving us in bridging our experience of heaven on earth realization, or not, or plugging us into the gravity of the matrix, the gravity of the grids, the gravity of the collective consciousness of the grid matrix. And so we get to choose. We get to choose. But sometimes we don't even know that we have a choice until we read a book or hear a teaching or bump into someone that shows us or have an experience of something otherwise. So there's some more comments here on YouTube. Oh, blessings, Tammy. Forgive others always and ourselves and move on. That has been a tough one. Forgiving myself. It has been such a slow process. Realizing yesterday, ancestral pull is so deeply connected. Ancestral pull. Now, I'd love for you to go on a little bit more about this. I know we're going to be wrapping up in a little while, Tammy, but if you're still on, speak a little bit about ancestral pull if you'd like, because I think it's interesting regarding levity and gravity. And I'm going to keep reading here. So Life is a Meditation Within Itself continues to comment and says, yeah, I wanted to check your stuff out, but the link on your webpage wasn't working. Maybe it's just my browser. My link, are you talking about the link in the show more box on the YouTube? Please clarify, so then I can fix it. Life is a Meditation. Please clarify so I can fix it. Or is it the one on Instagram? I'll go in and check them, but thank you for that heads up. And then life is a meditation within itself speaks to Tammy. And I love when the commenters comment with each other. I love when you're all like, yeah, what's up? So you say to Tammy, yeah, forgiveness and acceptance are like get out of jail free cards. I love that. Oh, life is a meditation within itself says it's the newsletter link. Oh, on the YouTube, you're saying. I think that's what you're saying. Okay, I will check that and I will fix that. And thank you so much. So it's interesting that Tammy's talking about the ancestral pool. And I wonder if you will, if you're still listening, Tammy, that you might give us a little guidance with that as we wrap up, because there's a lot of stories. And that's maybe a whole other 4DT that we can do just on its own about the ancestors and the ancestor. And, you know, I'm going to go where I live out here in the desert. I live in the Coachella Valley. And there's a beautiful rally of sisters that do a goddess temple, a goddess gathering every season. And so it's coming up to the spring equinox. I'll be very grateful to spend some time with them. And often what will happen is that we'll go around the circle and they would say, I am Sarah of mother, Jenny, grandmother Patricia, and great grandmother. So you speak your lineage, you speak the lines of who you're ascended from, and from as far back as you want to, and you kind of establish your here I amness in that circle, in that goddess temple circle. And I remember the last time I was there, which it's been quite a while, but I remember going around the circle and saying, I am Tuesday, the daughter of so-and-so, granddaughter of so-and-so. And as I was saying that, I was like, I could feel my higher self. I could feel a part of me that just was like recalibrating whatever that is and whatever that means. And now it's interesting because I had a thought about it. I was like, oh, I wonder if we're going to do that thing again where we all kind of introduce ourselves and say that piece, because I have relinquished my ancestors. I've really cut those cords and let all of those stories go, to the point where I feel that next time I introduce myself in that kind of a setting, and where that is an invitation to speak along those lines of lineages, that I won't have any. And as a lot of my personal friends and fam here, especially on the YouTube, because I've shared a lot more on the YouTube with regard to this, but I have a dear person in my family that myself and my mother had the honor of caring for. He had cancer. We had the honor of caring for him and hospice homing him up until his last breath. And he passed away in November of 2018. And I feel that he is an ancestor. And it's so funny you bring that up, Tammy, because just this morning in my meditation, I was calling in the angels and doing all this stuff. And I heard myself, I didn't even think about it, but I heard myself say, and my ancestor, like one. Like there's one ancestor, because the rest of everyone else that I thought might be that, I've relinquished and I've let that go. So that's a whole other paradigm. Again, we can get into that another time. For me personally, that has allowed me to come into that greater sense of levitate, of allowing myself to have a continuation, a continual feeling realization of levitating through the world, of being in the world and not of it. Why? Because I'm not carrying all their stories. I'm not here to heal their pain. I'm not here to do anything for them. And I know that sounds like shock and horror. In some spiritual circles, that might sound like, well, that's kind of ego or whatever. Yet, if I work for anyone, it is for love. It is for God. And only those aspects that may be aligned with that frequency is what is going to channel through in everything I do. And so whatever the pain and the stories of the past were, that all naturally becomes healed through me just being love, through me just accepting and allowing and aligning with love and with light, and allowing that to be my truth. So I no longer have to identify with those stories, with those people, with those pains, with those cycles. And there's so much stuff on Instagram or on social media. I'm not on Facebook. YouTube and Insta are my platforms currently. But where people are realizing, there's just these interesting posts where people are realizing that they don't have to continue the agreements that they've been given. Again, that little satchel of beliefs that you might have been given, or that we are given when we're born and we're brought into the world and told, like, okay, here's all the things you're supposed to be pissed off about men for the rest of your life because mom says so. Here's all the things you're supposed to believe about college, that you need to go and get a whatever to be a success. And here's all the stuff you're supposed to believe about your body, that you'll never lose the weight, or that you'll always be skinny, or that you're kind of always going to be unhealthy, or, whatever all the stuff is that we're told, and that's continually redefined and reintegrated into us through the medias that we choose to perhaps view and take in subconsciously, unconsciously, consciously. And these become the driving forces until we realize what's really serving us of those driving forces and what's not, and what we can leave behind and what will carry us forward. Or carry us really forward is really allowing us to be free and sovereign in the now. I say that mindfully because I do understand that we all have different work to do here in this lifetime. And for many, they feel that their work specifically is to heal those aspects, like to consciously, that's what they're here to do, is to consciously heal those ancestral grids, those ancestral lines, those ancestral this and that. And I honor that. I respect that. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that that's a bad thing or anything polarized about it at all, right? Each unto their own, and what calls you is what calls you, and that's where your power is. That's where you are bridging heaven on earth, by holding space and being that version of yourself, for that love and that light to shine through, and for you to hold space for others in that same realm. So I honor and I respect that. All I'm saying is that is no longer my choice, and that since I've allowed those beliefs and those structures, that scaffolding of those grids, once I've allowed that Tower of Babel to come down, because honey, again, that's the past, and that's all cool if we're here in the world. But remember, there's nothing to heal, there's nothing to change in the world. What? Blow your mind, I know, but really, the sooner, if it resonates with you, that you allow yourself to just meditate, contemplate, sit with that notion, chew on it for a while, put it in your pipe and have a puff about it, that there's nothing to change here about the world. There's nothing to save here about the world. Sooner you can get on with living heaven on earth, right? Because we remember that it's all in here. It's all the self-love. Knowing thyself divine is what collapses those timelines of polarities that keep us bound to the gravity of the grid, that keep us bound to thinking the world is real, when what I'm here to share with you, my friends, is heaven on earth is the new reality. Heaven on earth is the new earth that's under your feet when you exist in the now. And like that, in a moment, you can switch back and you can go into the past, and we toggle, right? Until again, that tipping point shifts enough where we've cleared enough of the debris, of the pain, of the shame, of the cyclic things, especially that just limit us. And there's things that are comforting. And I'm not saying that you have to just like go naked into the woods. I mean, you can. That's kind of fun, right? But I'm not saying that you have to just cut all ties and go hardcore shamanic and bury yourself up to your neck and try to forget everything. I mean, you might. Sounds kind of fun. Yet, you don't have to. I'm not saying that we have to go to those extremes, but sometimes those extreme metaphors help to paint the picture of that divine landscape, where if the pain of all of my ancestors of the past has been this repetitive thing in all of the women that have existed on the timeline, that I've chosen to incarnate now into this life, and I'm supposed to carry that on. I'm supposed to feel all of their pain, and believe me, I know many that do. I've been working in the realm of healing for close to 20 years now. I've almost seen it all. I don't want to say I've seen it all because I want to leave room. I want to leave room for more miracles. But you get to see and experience a multitude of different aspects that we're all working on healing and figuring out. And so allowing ourselves with grace, under grace, and for the highest good, and especially as you're guided. Don't do something because I'm telling you to, obviously, right? But because you know from spirit, from your truth, from God, from source, from love, that if it's time to allow the ancestors to go for you, that you can do so under grace. You can create a sacred ritual. You can create a sacred ceremony whereby you can honor, you can acknowledge namaste to all those that have come before. Because here's the twister in metaphysics. And this is why it's okay to let all that shit go, my friends, because all of those ancestors, now dig this, those are all you. Those are all you. It is you repeating the same cycles over and over and over again. So when are we going to get with it? If that's all you, continuing the story in the grids, continuing the perpetuation of those stories, of those timelines, of those realities for yourself and for everyone else who wants to plug into them. Now that's the kicker. That's the big one that's like, okay, whoa. If you believe or resonate at all with past lives and that you've been here before, which I'm going to make a little assumption here and consider that perhaps a great handful of us that are plugged in right now watching this, or that will come and see this later, have a resonance to that we have been here before. And so these are the perpetuation of these stories. So Tammy, I pray that that serves you, and she has not come back on yet. So I pray that as you watch this later or you come into this, that this will help you. And then Life as a Meditation is just ending here with saying, there was plenty of resistance, but it feels like I have too much strength and understanding not to push through. Woo! And you know, at a certain point, it's like there's that balance of us. You know, it takes courage. It takes courage to bridge 4D consciousness, especially when there's all the reasons why you should doubt yourself, all the reasons why you should fear that you're going to be hurt again, all the reasons why people are going to laugh at you, or whatever the stories are. It takes fierce courage in this world to stand up and to say, I exist. I am sovereign. I am one with the mind of God. And then boom, when that happens, that's the first strength, my friend, who's writing here in the comments on YouTube. And once that is aligned and anchored, then the strength that is required from that point on happens by us letting go and literally letting God. Because if we try to do everything on our own, and I know a part of you already knows this, but as we try to do everything on our own, then the amount of leverage that we'll have is limited by this mind and by this body. But with this mind and body, as we allow ourselves to, with courage, meet ourselves in our truth, face our shadow down, little by little, or layer by layer, or chunk by chunk, however it may be in our healing cycles, right? Again, that tipping point shifts, and there's more space for love, for light, for life force, for Kundalini, for us to like think clearly with that mind of God, of just like thinking with thoughts of love, speaking with words of love, and so co-creating the atomic structures of this universe, the energetic vibrational structures, the hologram that we live in, creating those correct conditions so that we can have that direct experience. And that's what carries us. The surrender. It's the courage to stand up in that truth, in the power and the glory of love, over and over and over again, using your spiritual willpower, building that muscle up. And then it's equally the surrender of allowing love then to carry you and to open the way, to show you the way. And I see there's a comment up here on Instagram, Intuitive Spirit Life. Oh, I'm so grateful you're here. Thank you. Choose to draw a line, cross it with grace, and don't look back. I think that's a beautiful way for us to end today's session. I'm so very grateful. Thank you everyone for hopping on. I love these platforms. Like I really do. And I'm so grateful for your support and for you being here. I will check the links on my YouTube. I know you have told me that some of them are not working, but go to my website if you have not yet. It's my full name, TuesdayMayThomas.com. If you are interested in the teachings, the information I share, sign up for my monthly love letter. It's my monthly newsletter at my website. It's the very first page. And if you can't hit the link there, my friend on YouTube that's trying to get through, just go straight to my website, TuesdayMayThomas.com. And the first page on the website will have a little subscribe. Get in there. You'll receive my monthly love letter that has a blog, information on the teachings. I will be in Ireland this fall in 2019, giving the first formal grid presentation, which I am so excited about. Will is going to be there with me. I'm also going to be doing a Reiki retreat in Ireland. So if you're planning to be out there in September of 2019, connect with me. If you want to help and support the teachings that I share, you can donate at the YouTube channel. I'm very grateful. Follow me on Instagram if you're not there. And, you know, check out my books if you appreciate them. I'm so very grateful. I love and appreciate and bless myself and you and all of us and these beautiful communities, these beautiful platforms. So thank you again. Every Thursday, 4D Trinity live on Instagram and on YouTube, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Next week's theme is the metaphysics of willingness. So thank you so much, everyone. So much love and so many blessings. Namaste, namaste, and namaste. Woo! Blessings. Okay. All this fancy footwork to do. Blessings, my YouTube community. I'm so very grateful. Thank you.